blessed and grateful to even be here right now, and just trying to learn as much as I can to be as useful as I can.
Stanley Herbert Johnson Jr., born May 29, 1996. The NBA hardship exemption rule, a gift and what could be a curse in some aspects, allows a team with at least 4 missing players due to injury or illness to exceed the 15-man roster limit and sign a player to fill a role on a team temporarily. Keyword temporarily. Once one of those players are cleared to return, the 15-man roster limit comes back into effect and the temporary player has to leave. That means today's feature is showcasing himself really for a future team, unless the Lakers see fit to bring him along permanently in the future. He's played in 3 games so far in the 21-22 season and is averaging 8 points in 27 minutes a game, shooting 47% from the field and 20% from 3, along with a steal a game. A player brought in to provide the Lakers with much needed youth, energy, and defense. A lucky break for a player that stayed close to the NBA, playing in the G League in this and last season. But initially, this wasn't the future anyone saw coming when Stanley Johnson stepped foot into the league, or what his potential suggested he would be as a top 3 player in the 2014 high school class and #1 rated player in California, as well as #1 shooting guard nationally. I know it doesn't seem like it now, but leaving high school, Stanley Johnson was compared to a few great players, and no one scoffed at those either. James Harden, Ron Artest, and even Kawhi Leonard. He had the pedigree, the size for the shooting guard position at 6'7" and well over 220 pounds, and most importantly, he had the confidence and swagger of a top 3 player all the way up to draft night. When asked why a team should take him #1 overall, he responded by saying, "Well, why not? I'm the best player in the draft." One team, the Detroit Pistons, believed that and made him their top pick that year, 8th overall, before notable players like Devin Booker, Terry Rozier, Jeremy Grant, and even serviceable players like Montrezl Harrell, Kelly Oubre Jr., and Kevon Looney. But that's where Stanley Johnson's star once was not too long ago. If the class was redrafted today, he'd easily go in the 2nd round or even undrafted. Is Stanley Johnson a bust so far? Yes. Here are 3 reasons why. Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Stanley Johnson is a 6'6", 6'7" shooting guard from Fullerton, California that had the ultimate high school basketball career. He's a 4-time state champion for Mater Dei High School with a 135-5 record at the small forward position, McDonald's All-American, Mr. Basketball, Gatorade California Player of the Year, and averaged 25 points a game, 8 rebounds, and 2 steals, ending a career top 3 in school scoring history. Those are just some of the highlights of Stanley's high school career, as his resume is much more decorated and his ceiling viewed much more differently than you see now at 25. But as far as projection based on production, it got no better than Stanley Johnson at that point. 5 stars all across the board. He chose Arizona over all the hometown big-name schools, as well as pretty much every top program in the country with available scholarships. He came into an Arizona team that played deep into the postseason the year before, and with key players graduated or off to the NBA, became their #1 option, leading scorer, and first-team all-conference selection. After his freshman season, where he averaged 13.8 points, 6.5 rebounds, 44% from the field, and 37% from 3, he did just enough to secure a lottery pick in the upcoming draft, leaving with the resume of a 5-star high school career and solid lone college season where he didn't do anything to hurt his coveted potential. Stunt #1, being drafted to Detroit. The problem with potential in life in general is it doesn't take into account situation. Tomorrow has the potential to be a great day based on the one you may have had today. But it may rain, you may get fired, ding your car, or lose a wallet, who knows? When it comes to sports, I think potential is addictive because each year you get to project a career, and whether you're right or not, you get the same chance 59 picks later and year after year. For the player, things aren't that simple. The goal in high school and nowadays your one season in college is to play as best as you can, win as many games and awards you can, choose the right school that's going to let you do that, and hopefully scouts and GMs see your potential and take you high in the draft. Doesn't matter where I go, they all say before the draft, understanding or not, in the back of their mind, they know it does matter. In Stanley's case, I think it was the biggest stunt to his growth. He was taken 8th overall to a Detroit team that won just 32 games the season prior, missing the postseason in Coach Stan Van Gundy's first year, taking over for Maurice Cheeks. On paper, it looked like a great situation for Stanley. A rebuilding team with lots of space to not only come in and start right away, but play the role that made him successful in high school and in college, the number one guy, or at least a fight for that opportunity based on his star potential and high draft pick. If only the team still had Mo Cheeks. Not for team success, more for the development of a player like Stanley Johnson, being as young as he was, and Mo Cheeks, the player-friendly coach his reputation paints him to be. Van Gundy, on the other hand, was known to be the opposite of that in his old-school disciplinarian, hard-on-the-young guys philosophy. Although he was and is a good coach, there's just something players never connected to with him, seen most famously the situation between he and Dwight Howard, or most recently being let go by the Pelicans, reportedly because the players just didn't vibe with his style. For a contending team, Stan might be great. As a nurturer of potential, maybe a little brash. Some players aren't built for that so early into their NBA career. I think Stanley Johnson was one of those guys. Stunt number 2 wasn't much more than physical. The coach he came into the league under was not the only issue for Johnson. He also had issues with his game that made him unable to have not just instant success, but success at all when he was on teams with the talent that suggested he could have. Physically, Stanley Johnson looked great coming into the league. He's had a league-ready body since high school and now was being listed at 6'7" in some places and 245 pounds. He was perfect for an NBA shooting guard, small forward, and just imagine the possibilities if he developed handles like a James Harden down the road. He could play some point forward as well. But for some reason, whether Van Gundy crushed his confidence or he was always overrated, work ethic, whatever the case, he's never amounted to much more than a physical specimen. And I knew it since Arizona. There's no way Stanley Johnson shouldn't have averaged 20 points there, I thought years earlier, but here we were. 4 years into his career and he's never averaged at least 9 points a game and shot 30% from 3 just one time. Although right at 30% and not much different than the 28% he's shot since then and for his career. Besides not being a good shooter in an era you're required to be for longevity, he wasn't a very good rebounder for his size, playmaker, or defensive two-way player he was projected as either. He was traded to the Pelicans in the 2018-19 season for the remaining 18 games before signing with Toronto beginning the 2019-20 season. Stunt number 3, what you see is what you get. After having to play in the G League, Stanley Johnson was given the gift of the NBA hardship exemption rule, but the curse of it exposing that there was a reason he wasn't in the league that still remains the case. In his 3 games with the Lakers, Stanley has been getting the opportunity at 27 minutes a game and has brought a boost of energy for the struggling Lakers. And of course, that's expected, being away from the league and no team wanting you, to a chance on what was thought to be a contending team. But the Lakers need much more than energy right now, as what could have helped them is something he still hasn't developed and I don't understand why. His jump shooting. Watching all 3 of his games with the team, you could see him working hard on defense and trying to be the energy guy, but also him turning down open shots because he just missed a few wide open and isn't confident when they actually need him to take one. Other times he's focusing on getting his shot up and it just doesn't fall. He's just never going to be a good shooter. For the Lakers, he's shooting 20% from 3 and averaging 7.7 points a game, attempting over 3 a game, and not much else at again just 25 years old. Pretty standard for Johnson, as these numbers are ones he's consistently put up in his years in the NBA that don't look to change no matter the situation. Will a team sign him after his hardship exemption is over? To be an energy guy you can put out there to foul the opposing team's best player, sure. But expecting him to become what we haven't seen so far is wishful thinking. What you see is what you get with Stanley Johnson. All in all, Johnson at least has the physical tools to be an NBA player along with the history. He's just 25 years old and still years outside of his prime. But when the NBA typecasts you as a certain player, it's hard playing outside of that and being allowed to show you can do more. Psychologically, who knows what he still thinks of himself and his future nowadays, but one thing's clear, if he wants to stick in the NBA, he has a lot of work to do, and the window is closing fast. Salute to Stanley Johnson, much respect for getting back to the NBA, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth, and I'm out.